Cool, welcome back. So in our last video, we talked about why you might not feel like yourself after a breakup. We discussed how your brain organizes routines, expectations, and emotional stability around the people that we attach to. And when that attachment suddenly disappears, your mind has to reorganize itself, which can make everything feel unfamiliar for a while. Okay, there's another experience that almost everyone goes through during this period of time. And it's something that can feel incredibly confusing. So, what is it, you guys might ask? It's that sudden urge to reach out to the person who left. You might be doing okay for a few days, maybe even a week, and then out of nowhere, the thought appears. Maybe I should text them. Maybe I should text them. Text them. Sometimes it happens late at night. Sometimes it happens when you see something that reminds you of them. And sometimes it just shows up for no clear reason at all. Now, when that urge hits, it can feel incredibly strong. And a lot of people assume that when this happens, it means they're still deeply in love with the person or that they just can't move on. But in many cases, that urge is not actually about love. What it's truly about, you guys, is withdrawal. So when we form close attachments with someone, our brain builds emotional habits around that person. Now you get used to sharing your thoughts with them. You get used to receiving comfort from them. You get used to that sense of connection being available whenever you need it. I'll keep that in mind. Over time, now your brain begins to rely on that connection as part of its emotional regulation. So when the relationship ends, it's not just the emotional loss that your brain experiences, it's also the sudden absence of habit your mind has grown dependent on. All right, you might have to hear that again. You might have to run that back. In some ways, though, it's similar to breaking any strong habit. Your brain actually remembers the relief that connection used to provide. And when you're feeling anxious or lonely or uncertain, your mind naturally reaches for that thing that used to calm those feelings, which is usually that person you're connected to. And that's why the urge to text them can feel so intense. Now, your brain isn't necessarily trying to rebuild the relationship in that very moment, but often it's just trying to restore a familiar emotional pattern that you guys have built, right? So it's looking for the comfort that it once knew. And this is why those urges often show up during emotionally vulnerable moments, right? So maybe you had a difficult day at work or at school, or maybe you're feeling lonely at night. Maybe you saw something that just reminded you of them. So in those moments, your nervous system is searching for regulation, right? It's looking for something that feels familiar and soothing at the same time. And your brain, because of the patterns that you built, remembers that this person used to provide that, which is going to make you miss them, right? So then, poof, the thought appears, the thought of maybe I should reach out, right? But the important thing to understand is that urges like this are temporary waves. So they feel intense in the moment, but they don't last forever. All right? This is like an emotional impulse. It rises, it peaks, and then eventually it passes. So, one of the most helpful things that you can do during this phase is just simply recognize what's happening in your own mind, right? And instead of immediately reacting to that urge that you feel so deep, you can actually learn to pause and remind yourself that this is just your brain looking for familiarity, right? This is a habit trying to reassert itself. And when you give yourself that moment of awareness, this is the crazy part, is that something super interesting happens. You begin to separate the feeling from the action, right? You realize that just because the urge appears doesn't mean you have to follow it. You guys might have to run that part back. Just because it appears doesn't mean you have to follow it. So over time, every moment that you choose not to act on that impulse helps your brain build new patterns. This is how we rewire our back to our factory settings, right? You begin teaching the mind that emotional regulation doesn't have to come from that person anymore, and that it can come from other sources, right? Things like your routines, your environments, your friendships, your growth. And slowly those urges begin to lose their intensity, right? So, are they going to disappear overnight? Probably not, right? Healing rarely works that way, almost never. But little by little, step by step, the space between those urges grows wider, right? Your mind starts to adapt to the new reality it's currently building, and eventually the need to reach out fades into the background. So, if you're experiencing that strong pull to text someone who is no longer a part of your life, right, it doesn't mean that something is actually wrong with you. It's actually quite normal. It doesn't mean that you failed to move on. It's like you're currently in the process of moving on. It just means that your brain is currently adjusting to the loss of a habit that it once relied on so much. And that adjustment, I'm here to tell you guys, is going to take time and patience. So every time you allow that feeling to pass without reacting to it, you're strengthening your ability to stand on your own emotional ground. And that's what we're here to do, right? Emotionally ground you. So you're actually teaching your mind that stability can come from within and not just from another person. And that's an incredible part of the healing process. All right. So in our next video, we're going to start talking through some different things, something that often confuses people even more than just this urge during the stages of healing, and why it can feel like the other person has moved on so quickly, and why that comparison can make the pain feel even heavier. So, if you're working through that heartbreak or you're trying to rebuild your emotional stability after a relationship, consider subscribing so we can continue exploring some of these ideas together. I'll see you guys in the next video. This is again Breathing Isaac with the Emotional Support Club. Welcome to the channel. Everybody get cozy. We're outside today. Get outside the house if you haven't gotten today. Let this be your sign. Just come outside and see what happens. I'll see you guys in the next video.